Hey, my stuff got delivered to my parents' house. What's going on? Did you get the packages? I want you to leave, so I sent all your things there. Why are you saying this all of a sudden? I have a girlfriend. I've decided to leave you and marry her. What? Isn't that cheating? She's younger than you and doesn't nag. She's exactly my type. She's a complete upgrade from you. You don't stand a chance. Do you understand that what you're doing is cheating? Also, I'm about to have a baby any day now. I get it. You want me to take responsibility, right? I'll pay for the affair and child support. Is $220,000 or $40,000 enough for the affair and $1,000 a month for child support? While I was at my parents' house to give birth, my husband sent my stuff there. He didn't even try to hide his affair. For my high-income, elite husband, paying for the affair and child support isn't a big deal as long as he can marry his girlfriend. I'll give you more details later. I'll keep the house and live there with her. Don't come back. I believe there must be a God. Surely, God would punish my husband. Fine, I don't need you. Let's get divorced quickly. Yeah, I got it. I'll contact you soon. Thank you, I appreciate it. I don't want any more trouble. Right, I'm glad we can get divorced without any fuss. My husband misunderstood my final words of gratitude. I believe he will face difficulties soon. The house he said he'd take to live with his girlfriend. Actually, I'm Anna. I'm 29, and I work at a company. I'm shy and not exceptionally skilled at my job. Because of that, I thought of myself as a background character in society. But as I approached 30, my life took a dramatic turn. There aren't many good places near our office. There are good places, but they're either too small or too far from the station. It's hard to find one that fits our needs. I'm searching for a house with Ken, who will soon be my husband. We pore over materials from real estate agents and online listings, struggling to find the right place. Even though it's a hassle, I secretly enjoy looking for a house while snuggled up next to Ken. I always try hard to look seriously worried instead of letting my happiness show on my face. I'm at the peak of happiness. I'll give you more details later. I'll keep the house and live there with her. Don't come back. I believe there must be a God. Surely, God would punish my husband. Fine, I don't need you. Let's get divorced quickly. Yeah, I got it. I'll contact you soon. Thank you, I appreciate it. I don't want any more trouble. Right? I'm glad we can get divorced without any fuss. My husband misunderstood my final words of gratitude. I believe he will face difficulties soon. The house he said he'd take to live with his girlfriend. Actually, I'm Anna, 29 years old, and I work at a company. I'm shy and not particularly skilled at my job, so I often felt like a background character in society. But as I approached 30, my life took a dramatic turn. There aren't many good places near our office. The good ones are either too small or too far from the station. It's hard to find one that fits our needs. I'm searching for a house with Ken, who will soon be my husband. We pore over materials from real estate agents and online listings, struggling to find the right place. Even though it's a hassle, I secretly enjoy looking for a house while snuggled up next to Ken. I try hard to look seriously worried instead of letting my happiness show on my face. I'm at the peak of happiness. But when I said my life took a dramatic turn, I wasn't just talking about getting married. Marrying Ken, who works at a prestigious international company, added a big twist to my life. We live in different worlds, but we met through mutual friends, and surprisingly, Ken approached me first. I still can't believe it, so I often ask him, "Hey, what did you see in someone like me again?" Your modesty. Nowadays, a lot of women are strong and assertive, but I'm not into that. Ken always looks obviously annoyed when I ask the same thing repeatedly, but I love that he always gives me the same answer, even if he looks annoyed. When Ken calls me modest, he's talking about my shy nature. He initially approached me simply because he liked my looks. When I first heard that, I thought it was a bit rude, but over time he grew to appreciate my modesty. Given how happy I am now, I can forgive his rude comments. In contrast, what drew me to Ken was his decisive and confident nature. Keep gathering info on properties, and did you tell the wedding planner about the changes to the menu? I'm planning to call about the menu tomorrow. What? You haven't told them yet? Handle the important stuff promptly. Yeah, I'll be careful. Ken sighed and began tidying up the property materials. He often delegates various tasks to me, and perhaps because of his elite status, he sometimes talks down to me. We're not married yet, but is this what they call a dominant husband? Some people might find it hard to believe. but for a shy person like me, it's actually easier when someone directs me on what to do. That's why I believe Ken and I are a good match. As the wedding day quickly approaches, we still haven't found a place to live. Since we didn't live together before getting married, we really wanted to start living together right after the wedding. But since that seems difficult, we made a decision. We thought we'd rent until we had kids, but maybe we should just buy that house. Yeah, that seems the most realistic. Ken picked up one of the property brochures and placed it on the table. This house is nearly 40 years old, surrounded by newer houses. It has been unsold for some time. It's well maintained for its age, but it needs some work before it's comfortable to live in. All right, we'll buy this house and renovate it right. Considering the renovation time, it won't be ready by the wedding, but it meets all our needs in terms of location and size. But are we okay to buy a house so suddenly? We're fine. Leave it to me. Ken looked confident. Most wives would be anxious if their husbands suddenly wanted to buy a house impulsively, but Ken's income is high and I also work, so it's not unreasonable. So we decided to buy a house right after getting married. Following my marriage, we even bought a house, and the elements of happiness were piling up at a faster and faster pace as if they were crushing my body. However, buying this house would later lead to an unexpected situation. After deciding to buy the house, we also had to find a contractor for the renovation. Of course, finding a contractor was my job. Since we'd be living there for a long time, I carefully searched for a contractor. However, with the wedding so close, Ken seemed to be getting impatient. Hey, did you find a contractor? Give me a little more time. I'm still looking. You're always so slow, but it's important. If I leave it to you, we'd never be able to live in the house. I'll handle finding a contractor. All right, I'm sorry. As usual, while discussing our wedding and future life in Ken's room, he got angry with me. I felt bad for causing trouble by not finding a contractor and couldn't say anything in return. Once Ken started looking, he arranged everything within a few days, and the renovation began the following week. He's really efficient, as expected from someone of his caliber. With his speed, it's no wonder he finds me slow. While the house was being renovated, we had our wedding without any issues. Since the house wasn't ready, I moved into Ken's place. I was a little disappointed that we couldn't start our newlywed life in our new home, but then a different kind of happiness came our way. Ken, I think I might be pregnant. Really? Ken was overjoyed, bouncing around like a kid. We thought we wouldn't rush into having kids, but I didn't expect it to happen so soon. I felt the same way. We figured we'd have kids eventually and were just going with the flow, so discovering I was pregnant right after the wedding was a surprise. I'm glad we decided to buy the house. 2 months after the wedding, the renovation was finally complete and we could move in together. It was so run down, but now it looks amazing, right? With a baby on the way, it was a good purchase. I hurried around our still sparsely furnished home, excited about starting our married life for real. But 3 months after moving into our house, Ken and I ended up living apart. Hey, did you check on that creaky floor in the hallway? No, not yet. I'll call a contractor tomorrow. But aren't you 8 months pregnant now? Use your vacation days and go to your parents' house early. What? I told you I'm planning to take maternity leave 6 weeks before. It'll be tough to move around in another month. Go now while you can. Okay, got it. When Ken suggested I go back to my parents' house early, it made me slow down, lingering over my dinner. We had already discussed and decided on having the baby at my parents' house, and the handover of my work for maternity leave was progressing smoothly, so taking leave a bit early wasn't a problem. But I wanted to spend as much time as possible with Ken at home. I thought Ken felt the same, so it was a bit of a shock when he told me to leave early. Still, I decided to follow his advice. The next week, I went back to my parents' house to prepare for the birth. Well, take care of the house. Yeah, don't worry about it. By the way, about the kitchen wall. Don't worry. I told you I lived alone for a long time. I can handle the housework. No, I mean the window frame too. All right, I'll take care of everything. Ken seemed to think I was being too persistent, so he gently pushed me out the front door. As I turned back, Ken was waving with a smile. I trusted that Ken would handle things well and decided to leave the house in his care. Mom, Dad, I'm home. Welcome back. It must have been tough, right? Not really. I'm okay. When I arrived, Mom greeted me at the entrance. Feeling a bit awkward about her concern, I averted my gaze. I didn't want to admit that I had spent $200 on a taxi from the house to here. Oh, you're back. Was it tough? No, not really. In the living room, Dad was there. I averted my gaze again at his words. Needless to say, my parents' house is comfortable. At home, Ken tends to be a bit domineering, and I did most of the housework, but here I just help out a bit. My parents are still in their late 50s, so they both work. Mom works part-time and comes home in the early afternoon, so I'm alone in the morning. I spend that time slowly cleaning and doing laundry for exercise. In the afternoon, Mom takes care of the house, so I have nothing to do. Having nothing to do feels oddly unsettling, so I end up following Mom around looking for ways to help. I want to call Ken and catch up on things, but ever since I came back home, he hasn't contacted me much or visited. Has Ken called you back yet? No, he hasn't returned any of my calls. I really need to talk to him. I wonder if something's wrong. He hasn't visited in a month. I'm worried. He's probably just enjoying his freedom and focusing on work since I'm not there. Mom peeled an apple, looking worried. I gratefully ate the apple she gave me. Mom is probably imagining negative things like Ken being sick or having an affair. But Ken is a capable professional, and we're about to have a baby, so I thought there was no way he could be sick or cheating. I soon realized how naive that thought was. One afternoon, while Mom and I were watching TV, the doorbell rang. Who is it? Looks like a delivery. It wasn't unusual to get a package, but Mom looked confused as she went to the door. I waited in the living room. I could faintly hear Mom talking to a delivery man but couldn't make out the words. After a while, Mom came back, looking worried and flustered. Hey, your stuff from your house is here. What's going on? What? What do you mean? I didn't understand what she was saying and could only repeat her question back to her. I slowly stood up to check the situation and headed toward the packages that had arrived. What's this? What's going on? When I stepped outside, there was a moving truck loaded with boxes. I opened one of the boxes and found my clothes inside. I opened another box, and it also contained my clothes. It looked like all the boxes were filled with my belongings from our house. I didn't understand the situation, but since the packages had arrived, I had no choice but to accept them. We pushed all the boxes into an empty room at my parents' house. The room was completely filled with boxes. After seeing the movers off, I called Ken in front of the delivered packages. I didn't expect him to answer, as he usually didn't, but this time he picked up right away. Hey, my stuff was delivered to my parents' house. What's going on? Did the packages arrive? I decided I want you out of the house, so I sent all your stuff there. What? Why are you saying this all of a sudden? Well, I have a girlfriend. I decided to leave you and marry her. What? He called her his girlfriend, but that meant he was cheating, openly declaring it to me, his wife. I couldn't comprehend what he was saying, and I started feeling dizzy. Isn't that cheating? Well, yeah, I guess. We started dating before the wedding. Guys can get cold feet too, you know. She was kind to me when I was struggling, and we started seeing each other. I couldn't call off the wedding, so I married you, but I couldn't give her up. When I lived with her in her house this past month, I realized she's better than you, so I decided to divorce you. Living with her? You mean she's been staying in our house for the past month? Calling her a mistress is disrespectful. She's my fiancée now. She's a mistress because I'm still here. My vision, which had been spinning, suddenly cleared, and I found myself yelling at Ken. My mom, who was listening to the call, looked extremely worried when she heard the word cheating. Not wanting to upset her any further, I forced myself to calm down. You told me to go back to my parents' house early so you could live with her, right? That's right. She's younger than you, not as slow, and exactly my type. She's a complete upgrade from you. You don't stand a chance. Do you understand that what you're doing is cheating? And I'm about to have a baby any day now. I get it. You want me to take responsibility, right? I'll pay for the affair and child support. Is $20,000 or $40,000 for the affair and $1,000 a month for child support enough? Even over the phone, I could imagine the smug look on Ken's face. Ken is an elite and high-income earner. Paying for the affair and child support probably didn't seem like much to him if it meant he could marry his girlfriend. In contrast, I'm a nobody. There's no way I could stop Ken from divorcing me for her, so I had no choice but to accept the divorce. As much as I wanted to refuse the alimony and child support out of pride, as a regular employee, I needed the money. It was a bitter pill to swallow. I gripped my phone tightly out of frustration and shame. That's the deal. The divorce is final, and I'll give you more details later. I'm keeping the house and living there with her, so don't come back. I thought to myself that there must be a God, and surely God would punish Ken. Fine, I don't want anything to do with you. Let's get divorced quickly. Yeah, I got it. I'll contact you soon. Thanks, that helps. I don't want any more trouble. Right, I'm glad we can get divorced without any fuss. After hanging up, Mom looked at me with concern. I smiled to reassure her. Ken misunderstood my final words of gratitude. I believed that he would face some trouble soon. 3 months later, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl named Maya and was still at my parents' house. She was so adorable that I couldn't bear to be apart from her, even though I needed to start looking for a place before my maternity leave ended. The divorce was finalized, and Ken agreed to pay for the affair and child support. I had no lingering feelings for my ex-husband. In fact, I felt refreshed after the divorce. Since we already settled everything, I thought I'd never have to deal with him again. But suddenly, he called me. He must have finally realized the situation. Hey, what's going on? What do you mean? The house. You mentioned something about the floors and walls, didn't you? Did you know about this? Yes, I knew. You hired a shady contractor for the renovation. Why didn't you tell me? I tried to, but you never returned my calls because you were too busy having fun with your girlfriend. Besides, I told you about the creaky floors before I left for my parents' house and asked you to check it out, but you were too focused on getting me out of the house quickly to listen seriously. Ken thought I was too slow in finding a contractor, so he took over the task. When he started looking, he quickly found someone and began the renovations. I was impressed with how efficient he was, but it turns out he chose the contractor based solely on price without checking reviews or reputation. So he ended up hiring a shady contractor. After living in the house for just 3 months, I noticed the floors creaking, cracks in the kitchen wall, and screws missing from the window frames. After moving back to my parents' house, I looked into the contractor and found out they were scammers. I tried to contact Ken to tell him, but he never returned my calls, and we ended up getting divorced before I could tell him. Because of you, the response was delayed, and now I'm having disputes with the contractor. They're blaming us, saying we lived in the house wrong for 6 months, causing the damage. The creaky floors, growing wall cracks, and poorly closing doors have all gotten worse. The house is a mess. That sounds like a terrible place to live. I've moved into an apartment to get out of the house. If I stayed, they'd keep blaming us for the damage. I'm talking to a lawyer, but for some reason, it looks bad for us. Still, I'm going to sue them. So your house is falling apart, and you're going to court. That sounds tough, but it's not my problem anymore. Is that why you called? That's right. If you had told me about the shady contractor sooner, this might not have happened. So what? I mean, I'll keep paying $500 a month in child support, but can we lower the monthly payments for the $20,000 alimony? What? I was shocked that my elite, prideful ex-husband was suddenly asking me for a favor about money. We moved, right? So now I've got the land, house renovation loans, and apartment rent. I'm going to sue the contractor, but I don't know how that'll go, and there are lawyer fees. I might even have to pay for the house repairs myself. You said your wife is better at her job than I am. Doesn't she make a decent income? Actually, she was my colleague at work. I told everyone at the company that we got married after I divorced you, but apparently, there were rumors about us before that. So now people at work are giving us the cold shoulder. Yeah, she couldn't take it and changed jobs, which cut her salary drastically. I can't afford to switch jobs too, so I stayed. But money is tight. Ken had hired the shady contractor himself and was now having a huge dispute. His affair had damaged his standing at work. It was a classic case of self-inflicted trouble. Despite his high income, he was just over 30, and all these expenses were tough to manage. But it was his own fault, and it had nothing to do with me. It sounds tough, but you need to keep your promise. Wait a minute. I hung up on Ken. His voice just before the call ended sounded pitiful, not at all like the elite man he once was. Feeling a bit down after hearing his voice, I spent some time watching my daughter sleep. In the end, Ken lost the case about the defective house. The shady contractor managed to avoid any consequences, likely due to their knowledge of loopholes and deceit. It seems that even the elite, as expected, were not able to meet the vices of the corrupt contractor. Ken wanted to repair the house, but there were too many hidden issues, and the costs were too high. Naturally, he didn't want to live in a house with so many problems. He ended up selling the house. Since it was full of defects, the building had no value, so he sold just the land after demolishing the house. The land sold, but the loan remained, leaving my ex-husband with debt. With the house issue resolved, he decided to change jobs. He figured the debt was manageable even with a lower income, so he left his uncomfortable workplace. However, his fall from grace didn't stop there. His new wife, who had to deal with the huge house trouble right after they got married, and the fallout of their affair being exposed at work, blamed him for everything. Their relationship deteriorated, and she eventually left him. Now my ex-husband lives alone in an apartment with a lower income from his new job and monthly payments for his debt, alimony, and child support. His once luxurious life as an elite is now a life of frugality. He foolishly pursued an affair, losing his money, house, and family in the process. Love is indeed blind. I plan to start looking for an apartment for my daughter and me soon. When I talked to my company about my child, they agreed to let me work shorter hours, but I don't need to change jobs. I'm grateful for that. Returning to work will be challenging, so I intend to fully enjoy the precious time with my adorable daughter while I can.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look, "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day." Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. "So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.